Hey guys, so it's near the end of 2022, so I figured I can do a survey to gather your thoughts on Yu-Gi-Oh for the year. So this is gonna be the longest data video I ever made, so I thought it'd be funny to get my fiance to voice over a part of this video. Anyways, we had over 2,500 players respond to the survey, so thank you so much for participating and sharing the survey. It really did make a huge difference. And before I continue, a big thanks to my sponsors as always, links and discount codes below. So let's quickly go over some general questions in terms of the competitive profile of our respondents. We had about 60% of our players who identified themselves as semi-competitive or competitive, with a big chunk and almost 40% being casual players. Now of course, this likely is not a true representation of the actual Yu-Gi-Oh player base, since there's going to be a lot more casual than competitive players, but my audience is generally competitive players, so keep that in mind. In terms of the number of years played, we had about 28% having played over 10 years, which is becoming more common now that the game has been out for over 20 years. But good to see the small percentage of players that decided to enter the game this year. In terms of players' enjoyment level for 2022, a little over 3/4 of the respondents said that they agreed or strongly agreed that they enjoyed Yu-Gi-Oh this year, so while there's definitely complaints right now about the Tier 0 format, at least overall, players seem to like the state of the game at the moment. In comparison to last year, about 60% said that they played Yu-Gi-Oh more than last year. Now this is of course a relative measure, so even if you said that you played less than last year, you might still be playing a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh, but I think this year in particular is a unique situation since we had the return of in-person premier events, so it does make sense that most players probably played more Yu-Gi-Oh than last year. Next, in terms of attendance at competitive level events, looks like no surprise, most players did not attend any regionals, but among those that did, they mostly attended 1 to 2 this year. This of course has a lot to do with where you live and not necessarily your will to play this game competitively, since some areas just do not get a lot of regionals and the other cities that host them might be too far away. Similarly, in terms of the number of YCS events that people attended this year, you had about 20% attend 1 to 2, with even 4 players stating that they attended more than 10 YCS events this year. Not sure if some of these respondents were just not being truthful, but definitely serious dedication to this game if you're attending more than a couple YCS events a year, because that likely means you are traveling far distances to make these events. In terms of the number of different decks that you played in 2022, at least at the local level, looks like the most common number was 2 to 5 decks at 47%. So despite the abundance of different decks available in this game, most players, including the really competitive ones, are not really playing too many different decks, since of course there's a big cost component to playing a lot of different decks, but in general, your tier 1 deck will probably last you a few months. Okay, so now I'll just pass on to my fiance for the product section.
Okay, so now let's move on to the products of the year for 2022. For core sets, we have almost half of the respondents say that the Power of the Elements was their favorite core set of the year. This is not surprising since this set introduced both Sprite and Tier Elements, which immediately became Tier 1 strategies and shifted the meta even without an introduction of a ban list. The next favorite was Darkwing Blast, which again is probably not too much of a surprise considering that this set boosted the existing Tier Elements and Sprite support, although it certainly boosted Tiers a lot more. The set also introduced some key staples such as the Bestials and Fenrir. Onto the side set, and there were a ton of them in 2022. The most favorite was Magnificent Mavens, that narrowly beat out the Megatons. This set not only introduced the Ishizu cards that launched Tier Elements into Tier 0 status, but also brought some amazing reprints, and arguably better reprints than the Megatons. Speaking of the Megatons, they were certainly a good product as well, providing reprints to nice staples and even reprinted cards that were released much longer than a year ago, breaking the Megaton tradition in a good way. On to the structure decks, which we only had 3 of in 2022, and Alba Strike was chosen as the most favorite. Not surprising since this deck helped Branded Despia become an immediate Tier 1 deck. Next was the most recent deck released only a week ago in Dark World, which is a bit of a legacy support, although unfortunately came at a bad time. Lastly, we have the Crystal Beast structure deck, which did not get as much love, but of course was a very nice set and is even now a solid rogue strategy against Tier Elements. Onto the OTS packs, and the top choice was OTS 18, which is where we saw ultimate rares such as Fusion Destiny, Ecclesia, as well as Zeus. Then a pretty close tie between OTS 19 and the most recent OTS 20 set, and we can cover the favorite ultimate rares next.
Alright, so back to me. Now on to your favorite ultimate rares released this year. The number 1 pick was Zeus. Xyz monsters always look so nice as ultis, and a staple extra deck monster that still sees play in the top decks like Tiers and Sprite was a really nice pick. The remaining cards had pretty similar votes, and I would say that we did not have any real chase OTS ultimate rares this year like we did last year, such as droplets and imperms, which are much more expensive than any of the ultimate rares introduced this year. As for your favorite staple cards released this year, the top choice was Bestials, which were released in Darkwing Blast and became a stronger version of DD Crows, as well as possibly serving as extenders. Very strong and has really shifted deck building as well. The next favorite was the Adventure Token package, which saw a huge amount of play at the start of the year until the ban of Anaconda, which brought the death of Pile Adventure decks, and some other choices included Fenrir, Ultimate Slayer, and even Illusion of Chaos, which also sorta died in play after the death of Pile decks. Next, in terms of your favorite extra deck monster released this year, the number one choice was Dark, which almost seemed like it was released a lot farther back than this year. Dark immediately became the best Charmer Link by far and saw a lot of play early in the year to take the opponent's DPE, and now is used to allow for an easier sprint or elf line in tier limits. Speaking of elf, that was another popular choice at 21%, which not only is used in spread and tiers, but a lot of rogue options that have level 2 monsters as well. Another popular option was Garura, which has become the best super poly target that was introduced in Power of the Elements, and is seeing a lot of play in tier limits even if you don't play super poly. Now, as for your favorite format, looks like most players voted for post-May ban list 2 before the release of Power of the Elements. So this is basically when Branded Despia became that tier 1 deck of the format and Sword Soul was still strong. Branded Despia being the number 1 deck really seemed like it didn't last very long, and this sort of transitions to people's second favorite format, which was right after the introduction of spread and tiers, but before tiers became tier 0. Definitely was a fun format with at least 2 really strong decks at roughly equal level of power and really shifted things in the meta. As for people's favorite ban list this year, the number 1 choice was the May 2022 list. Now this is when we had Auroradon, Meow Meow Mew, and Anaconda that got banned, so these were some massive hits to the best decks, not to mention you also had old cards like Yada, Change of Heart, and Time Seal come back to 1 as well. Looks like the least favorite list was the one in October, which is where we technically had a lot of bans like Chaos Ruler, Hulk, Snow, as well as some surprising bans in Ronin Totem and Red Reboot. They also still did not ban Mystic Mine at this point, despite the plea of almost every player, so it definitely was not received too well. In terms of the favorite archetype released this year, Sprite narrowly edges out Tier Limits as a favorite at 25%. While no longer the best deck in the format, definitely was a nice addition to the format, and as an engine, could also allow for some rogue decks to be more competitive. Labyrinth is another archetype that is recently getting some more love, and Runic is also an interesting archetype that was released this year that sadly is becoming more so used for degenerate stall strategies. Now, as for the best and strongest deck released in 2022, no surprise, the majority of the votes at 88% went to Shizu Tier Limits. The deck basically can do everything, and if anything is definitely one of the best decks in recent memory. Interestingly, Sprite was voted 6th strongest, with Adventure Prank Hits being the runner-up. Alright, so now let's move on to the best player voting, and basically you could place someone at 1st, 2nd, or 3rd and there will be associated points based on where you rank them. Now if someone put the same person as 1st, 2nd, and or 3rd, then those repeat entries were removed so that you could not artificially increase a player score. And so keep in mind this type of voting has some objective components in terms of event tops, but also has a lot of subjectiveness to it as well in terms of how you determine someone is the most skilled player, so keep that in mind. And now before I continue, definitely make sure to check out Seto360's channel as well as his Twitter, as he will be providing way more detailed information than I can regarding the top players' tournament achievements this year. Links down below. Now at number 5 with a total of 426 points, we have Christian Urena, who actually just recently won the North American Remote Duel YCS and also achieved a staggering 8 premier event tops this year. Again, make sure to check out Seto360's channel on more details regarding the event tops. Christian also has a Metafy page for coaching services, by the way, so I'll link that as well. At number 4, we have Paulo with 465 points, an incredible player who has been on a tear this year with also 8 premier event tops. Some of you might have seen the running joke where his deck list basically involves something like 30 hand traps, but regardless, really cool to see his kind of deck building, and he also has Twitch and YouTube channel called YUGiOH, so check those out, and he also coaches on Metafy as well. Next at number 3 is Hani Jawari, who finished 1st place at YCS Pasadena, where this was the first premier event where Ishizu Tier Limits was legal, and that final match against Jesse Cotton was arguably one of the best Yu-Gi-Oh! I think anyone's ever watched. He also had a crazy 6 premier event tops this year, and also has started streaming on Twitch and making videos on YouTube as Hani TCG, so go check him out. Now at number 2 is Joshua Schmidt, and this is where the scores are much more pronounced with over 2,500 points. While Josh did not attend as many YCS events as some of the other players mentioned, he still had an unreal run where most notably, he won YCS Utrecht with Runic Sprite. An incredibly smart player in terms of deck building and gameplay, he has also been tearing it up on the content creation scene, where he streams on Twitch and shares videos on YouTube with really insightful meta content, so definitely check him out if you haven't already. And finally, this means that the player voted as the best player in the TCG is, you guessed it, Jesse Cotton, an absolute household name in Yu-Gi-Oh for quite some time. Jesse had 6 premier event tops this year with 2 very close second place finishes, and most recently winning YCS Costa Rica. Incredible player, and proud to say that he is a fellow Canadian as well. Also, in case some of you didn't know, Jesse also runs an online business to sell Yu-Gi-Oh stuff called Pro Potato Cards, so if you love Yu-Gi-Oh or potatoes, definitely go check his store out, and I'll have all the links down below. Now, as for the best player by region, I'm just gonna breeze through these because the video is getting a lot longer than I'd like already. So for the USA Canada region, we have Jesse Cotton at number 1 of course, as well as Hani for 2nd. And then we have a tie for 3rd with Pac and Christian Urena. And Pac of course is very well known in the content creation scene and has proved to be one of the best players out there as well. And then we have Triff Gaming, the Pen God, being voted at 5th, narrowly beating out Chris LeBlanc for this region. As for Central America, the number 1 voted player was Jose Carrillo, followed by Alejandro Garcia and Felipe Urias, where all 3 of these players had 3 premier event tops this year, so congrats. Then for South America, we have Paulo voted 1st, followed by Andres Torres, who of course has 5 YCS championship wins in his career, which is insane. Then we have a tie between Caesar and Rafael, and make sure to check out Rafael's YouTube channel called YUGiOH as well. And then at 5th we have Michael, so another round of congrats to all of you. Next for Europe, we of course have Joshua Schmidt at number 1, and at 2 is another big name in Rafael Nevin, who consistently tops YCS events with 7 tops this year. And then we also have Vladis, aka Hypnocorn, who had an insane year with 5 premier event tops. And then we have Zio Mundry, another very successful player with 4 premier event tops this year, as well as Marcus Patel, who actually won Euros this year with an underrated Rika strategy. Lastly, for Australia and New Zealand, the 2 players nominated were Bowden, who is probably most well known for coming 2nd place at World Championships a few years ago, and then we have Po Jiang, who actually won YCS Hartford this year with the beloved Sky Strikers strategy, so very accomplished players. As for the people's favorite pro player, so this for example could relate to the pro player's social media presence, and we have Joshua Schmidt lead the pack as the people's champion. Then we have Jesse at 2nd, followed by Pac, and also Nesh, who of course also streams on Twitch, so go check him out as well. And then at 5th we have Paulo yet again, so a big pat on the back for all of you. Alright, so now on to the final section, your favorite content creators. To list out the top 10, we start out with Dualogs, who of course makes the best top 10 Yu-Gi-Oh content out there. And then we have DB Grinder, who provides really strong competitive content as he narrates over gameplay between highly competitive players. Tied for 7th was Rada, who provides archetype specific content, and Pac was also tied for 7th, where he provides really good competitive content in terms of deck profiles, strategies, as well as the GooCast podcast. Then at 6th we have Simo, one of the biggest names in this game and the pioneer of the progression series, as well as a variety of other series content that he started for others to follow. Now let's focus on the top 5 in a bit more detail, and at 5th we start with DZeef. Has been creating content for quite some time now and has brought good discussions on a variety of cards and strategies, and more recently known for a series involving Master Duel. And then at number 4 is this encoder, who has grown so much this year and continues to grow at a rapid pace. Was best known for his content involving Yu-Gi-Oh rulings, but now also provides a lot of fun Master Duel content, so definitely go check out both his Twitch and YouTube. And number 3 is Joshua Schmidt, who I previously mentioned as an incredibly good player, but also provides really good content regarding competitive play, so if you want to get better as a player, you should definitely check out his channel, and you can already tell that his channel is going to get much bigger over time. And number 2, we have Farfa, probably the biggest creator out there in the Twitch scene for Yu-Gi-Oh, and is also a ginormous name in the YouTubing scene. Farfa provides a lot of fun content that is bound to make you laugh and has been growing at a rapid pace. My channel also would not be where it is if it was not for Farfa sharing my content numerous times, so a big thanks to you. And finally, this means that the number 1 favorite content creator for Yu-Gi-Oh in 2022 is once again MBT. Has also been growing at an incredible pace this year, where he is on both Twitch and YouTube. Provides a variety of content such as 10-minute testing, where he goes over many new strategies, breakdown of his Chalice Line monthly tournaments, discussions, and much more. So big congrats to everyone, wish you continued success in 2023. Now while we are on the topic of these big name YouTubers, I did ask what your favorite series content is out there, and DZ's Master Saga came out on top. A lot of really good series content out there, and obviously way more than just the ones that I listed in the survey, but 2022 has been a great year for new series content that's really gotten people hooked, so keep that stuff up. And to finally cap off the best newcomers to the Yu-Gi-Oh content creation scene, here's the top 5. We first have Eva Lees, who streams a variety of Yu-Gi-Oh content on Twitch and is a rogue deck enthusiast, and also has a very big presence on Twitter, so make sure to check her stuff out. And then we have Sarah Hyde and Luke Von Karma with some Master Duel content that you can check out. And as for Sakuno, someone fill me on in this one because I don't think he's an exclusive Yu-Gi-Oh content creator, but congrats nonetheless. And of course, at number 1 at a wide margin was Joshua Schmidt, so keep doing what you're doing. I'll have everyone's links down below. Alright guys, so that was probably the longest data video that I've ever done, and this took an incredible amount of work. So if you liked the video, I would appreciate it if you could share it with your Yu-Gi-Oh friends online. Thanks again for participating, and hope you enjoy the rest of 2022. As always, a big thanks to my Patreons, Eileen Dice Queen, Bolt Spider, Cybernetic, Brandon Jaren, Bearlord, Spooky Boogie, Stephen Phillips, and Chaz Blanks as always for supporting the channel. You guys mean a lot. If you're interested in joining my Patreon, link down below. Take care guys.